Okay, we're going to get started on this project. So today I'm using an eye hook or a 5.5 millimeter, and you could certainly use a larger hook or a smaller hook. And we are using a bunch of different worsted weight yarn, number 4. I have the one skein of red, and I have a whole bunch of different balls of white that I'm trying to use up, and it should be okay with this project. So to get started, we obviously need to make our slip knot, and we are going to chain 3. And in the third chain from our hook, we're going to work 9 half double crochet. And if you prefer to do a magic circle, you can certainly do that. I'm not a big fan of magic circle. I just think it's fiddly. It's just not my cup of tea, but you know, you can certainly use it if you want to. And I find this way is a little sturdier. And we have 2 more, 8 and 9. Now the skip chain 2 is not going to count as a stitch, so we are going to join and just skip literally right over that chain 2. And we have completed 9 half double crochet for round 1. Okay, so now we are ready for round 2. So for round 2, you're going to chain 1, and we are going to work 3 single crochet in the same stitch. So there's the first one, the second one, and the third one. And in our next stitch, we're going to work a single crochet. In our next stitch, we are going to work a single crochet and a half double crochet in that same stitch. So there is the single crochet, and here is the half double crochet. Okay, so in our next stitch, we are going to work a half double crochet and 2 double crochet. So there's the half, and there's the first double crochet, and here is the second. Okay, in the next stitch we are going to work a double crochet and then a half double crochet in that same stitch, and then in the same stitch we are working a slip stitch, and then in our next stitch we are going to work a slip stitch, a half double crochet, and a double crochet. So the opposite of what we had done on the other side. So just like that, we want to mirror it. And then in the next stitch we're going to work 2 double crochet and then a half double crochet. Oops. This yarn's wanting to split. Let's not do that. It's really old yarn. Not even sure where I got it. Like I said, yarn just kind of happens for me. Alright, in our next stitch we are working a half double crochet and a single crochet. And then we have one more stitch here, and we're working a single crochet. And it looks like we have a stitch here, but we don't. And we are going to join in our first stitch with a slip stitch, just like that. And we have completed round 2. Okay, so now we are ready for round 3. So we are going to slip stitch in the next stitch right here, and we are going to chain 1, and we are going to work 3 single crochet in the same space, just like we did before. So we've worked our 3 single crochet. Now we are going to single crochet, 1 single crochet in the next 4 stitches. So there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Our next stitch we are working a half double crochet, and then our next stitch we're working a half double crochet and then a double crochet in that same stitch. The next stitch we are working 2 double crochet, and the next stitch we are working 2 more double crochets in the same stitch. Nice squeaky yarn there. It's a really old acrylic. And then in the next stitch we are working a double crochet and a half double crochet in that same stitch. And then in this previous slip stitch we are working another slip stitch. So just like that. And now we're going to mirror what we did on this side on the other side. So we're working a slip stitch in the next stitch. Now we need to work a half double crochet and a double crochet in the next stitch. We're going to work 2 double crochet in this next stitch. And we need to work 2 more double crochet in the next stitch. In our next stitch we are going to work a double crochet and a half double crochet. In our next stitch we are working a half double crochet. And then we work in the last 4 single crochet. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then we will join in the first stitch. So if you're confused about what is the last stitch, well, you can put a stitch marker in the first one. If this is the chain 1, it gets confusing in there for some people. What's the first and last stitch when working in rounds, especially with single crochet. So you can always put a stitch marker in your first stitch, so then when you get to the end, then you'll know that it's your first stitch. And we'll join with a slip stitch, and we have completed the heart. And you can make it in more than one color if you want. It's up to you. Okay, so now we are going to get ready to work round 4. So at the end of round 3 you will have a total of 31 stitches, and I'm going to get ready to switch to a different color. So you're going to want to work to do that, and I highly recommend doing that with this project so that your heart really pops out with a contrasting color. So to get your next color started, you're going to slip stitch in the back loop of the next stitch, the bottom of the heart. So you're going to insert your hook, then you're going to get your next color, which I have ready to go right here, the white, and just slip it through and you're all ready to go. And we are going to be working in the back loops for this round. So we're going to chain 1 and we're going to work a single crochet right in the same stitch right here in the back loop. We're going to chain 3 and we're going to single crochet right back in that stitch. Oops, the yarn just split. Goodness. Goodness, goodness, goodness. And this yarn, this was a project that I had started and I undid it, or maybe it was a swatch, I don't know. So it's a little bit kinked up, this yarn, but it'll straighten itself out. Alright, so now we're going to continue for round 4. Enough of my yarn's problems. We're going to chain 3 and we're going to skip 2 single crochet, or 2 stitches, because they're not all single crochet. So 2 stitches and work in the back loop of the next and work a single crochet. And working in the back loops is really going to help to highlight the heart, because that's the focal point of this little square, is the heart, so you really want to be able to see it. So we're going to skip the next 2 and work single crochet after we chain 3. We're going to do this for this whole round. So we're chaining 3, so 1, 2, this next stitch, single crochet, and it's okay, it's going to be a little tight around the curvy part of the heart, but it'll be all right. So we're going to chain 3 So we're skipping 2, 1, 2, back loop, single crochet. So now you can see that the heart is really highlighted and popping out, especially using the contrasting color. So we're going to chain 3. So 1, 2, and then in the slip stitch right here, you're going to work your single crochet in the back loop. So after we single crocheted in this back loop of our slip stitch, we're going to chain 3, and we're going to single crochet in the next slip stitch in the back loop. So this one kind of wants to hide because it's, you know, going in, which is what we want for the heart, but just make sure you don't miss this stitch. So it's right there. So you're going to single crochet in that back loop. So we have a little loop there at the top, and now we're going to chain 3 and then continue so that we match the other side that we did. So skipping the 2 and then working our single crochet in the back loop. And we're going to continue this for the rest of the heart. So 1, 2, single crochet in the next stitch, chain 3, so skipping 2 stitches, single crochet in the next, chain 3, skipping 2, single crochet in the next, and then we have these 2 stitches which we are going to skip. So we're going to chain 3 and join with our slip stitch in our first single crochet right here. And after round 4, you will have a total of 12 chain 3 loops for round 4, and we're going to get ready to work round 5. So now we're ready to work round 5, and you can see by using the white, the heart really pops out nicely. So I'm going to use white again for this round. I will be switching back and forth with red and white, but we're going to use white again. So I'm going to chain 1, and we're going to work a little puff stitch right in this same stitch. So to do that, you're chaining 1, you're inserting your hook right in that same stitch like you're working a single crochet. You pull up your loop, yarn over, go right back in there, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 4 of those loops. And if you've followed some other patterns of mine, I have used this stitch before and I actually really like it. It's just a little bit different than a single crochet. Kind of mix it up and adds a little interest, so, and it's easy. Anyway, so now we're at our chain 3 space. We are going to work 2 single crochet in that space, and then in our next stitch we're working the little puff stitch in our single crochet. So I pull up my loop, yarn over, have my 4 loops there, yarn over, pull through all 4. So now we're back to our chain 2. We're going to work 2 single crochet, and then in the next single crochet we're working the puff stitch. So pulling up our loop, yarning over, going back right in that loop, pulling up another loop. So we have 4 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through all 4. So we're going to work chain 2. So you're going to do this all the way around. I'll show you the first half here. So 2 single crochet, our puff stitch, and 2 single crochet, the puff stitch, and then next single crochet stitch, 2 single crochet, working the puff stitch and the 2 single crochet, and puff stitch right in here, 2 single crochet. So I'm going to continue this around. So in each single crochet you work a puff stitch, in each chain 3 space you work 2 stitches, 2 single crochet. So I will meet you back at the end of round 5. Okay, so I'm almost done round 5. I've worked my 2 single crochet and I need to join, but I want to switch to another color. So I'm going to insert my hook in the next, and I've got my red ready to go right here, and we're going to finish off the stitch with our slip stitch just like that. And we have completed round 5. So at the end of round 5 you will have 12 little puff stitches here, and you're going to have 24 single crochet. So now we are going to get ready to start round 6. So for round 6, actually I want to snip my white here to get it out of the way. Sometimes you can carry your colors, but with this project I wouldn't recommend that because you will see where you carry and you don't want to do that. So you will have some ends to weave in, but you know, it's alright. It'll look really nice. It should be worth it, hopefully. Alright, so we're going to get ready for round 6. So you're going to chain 1. You're going to work a puff stitch right in that stitch. Oh my, this yarn is splitting to death here. Come on, don't do that. Technical difficulties. Got my stitch start. Oops. Goodness gracious. Alright, let's try that again. So we've starting the puff stitch, so it's like I'm working a single crochet. We're going to yarn over. Crochet bloopers, you know. Now we can finish off this stitch. There we go. Alright, so now we're going to chain 4. So we've chained 4. We're going to skip these 2 stitches here. And in the puff stitch, we are going to work another puff stitch. Just like that. So you've got your little chain 4 there. So now we are going to chain 4 again. We're going to skip these 2 stitches, and in this next stitch we're going to start our corner. So to do that, we're going to yarn over, insert your hook right in that puff stitch there, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. We're going to yarn over again. We're going to go right back in, just like if we were making a decrease. Yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through all 3. And we have a little situation. There we go. So now we are going to chain 3. This will be the first corner. We're going to yarn over and we're going to work that same cluster stitch right in there that we just did. Just like if you were working a decrease, but instead of working across 2 stitches, we're just going right back in that same stitch. So pull through the 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 3. So now we've established our first corner. We're going to chain 4. And now we are going to skip the next 2 stitches and work our puff stitch right in the next stitch, right there, right on top of the previous one. So we're going to chain 4 again. We're skipping 2 stitches and working our puff stitch right in the next one. We're going to chain 4 again. We're going to skip our 2 stitches, and then this next puff stitch we're going to work the next corner. So yarn over, pull up a loop, just like you were working a decrease or a together stitch, but we're not going over 2 stitches, yarn over, pull through 3, and then chain 3, which establishes the corner, and we're going right back in there. I'm going to call it a cluster stitch because they're 2 stitches clustered together, I guess. Alright, so we have established our second corner. We're going to chain 4. We're skipping the 2 single crochet, 1, 2, and we're working a puff stitch right in there. So we're going to chain 4 again. And you guessed it, skip the next 2 and work your puff stitch in the next. And we're going to chain 4 again, and then the next stitch will be another corner. So we're chaining 4, we're going to skip the 2 and work the corner stitch by working our cluster. So the yarn over, and there we go. We're going to chain 3 and go right back in there and work the other cluster stitch. And we're back to chaining 4. So we're almost done round 6. So skip 2, work your little puff stitch there. So chain 4, skipping 2, work the next puff stitch, And then we will work our last corner stitch. So skip 2, and then right on top of this puff stitch we are working the corner with our clusters and our chain 3. And we're going right back in there to finish off that cluster stitch. And we're going to chain 4, and then you will join in your first stitch. And you will have completed round 6. So there is round 6. So now you can see the heart really popping out nicely there. Alright, so we are ready for round 7, and I've already switched to white. So after round 6 you will have 3 chain 3 spaces and 12 chain 4 spaces. So for round 7 we're going to chain 1, and we are going to work a cluster stitch right in the same, not a cluster, I'm sorry, a little puff stitch right in the same stitch right here. So on top of the other cluster. So this is a different shade of white. It's a little more off-white, but I think it'll be okay. Okay, so then in this next chain 4 space, we are working 5 double crochet. So we've worked our 5 double crochet, so now we're going to work on top of this little puff stitch. You're going to work another puff stitch. And there's that ball, it's rolling around. Let me see if I can do something with him. Get him out of the way. Alright, so we're at our next chain 4 space. We're going to work 5 double crochet. It's not always smooth sailing. It's not always pretty when you're working, when you're crocheting. Stuff goes down sometimes. So here's our number 4 double crochet, and then number 5. And now we are at our first corner, so we are going to work the same in the chain 3 space what we did in this stitch. So we're going to work our cluster right in the chain 3. So we're going to skip this cluster here and just work that cluster stitch, chain 3, and right back in there working our cluster stitch. And now we are back to our chain 4. We're going to work 5 double crochet, and we're going to work our little puff stitch in the next puff stitch and work 5 double crochet. So you're going to do this all the way around. You're going to work 5 double crochet in each chain 4 space. You're going to work a little puff stitch on top of the puff stitch, and then you're going to skip your cluster and work the cluster, chain 3 cluster in the chain 3 space. So I'm going to continue that all the way around for round 7. Okay, I'm almost done round 7. So when you are done round 7, you're actually going to join in the back loop of your first puff stitch, and I am going to switch back to red. So I'm going to get my red ready to go. There she is. Oops. Come on, red. There we are. And I'm going to cut the white just to get it out of the way. Alright, so now we are ready for round 8. So for round 8, we are chaining 3 to start with. So we've chained 3, and in the same stitch we're working 4 double crochet. What is going on? Getting extra loops instead of just the back loop. And for this whole round, except for the corner stitches, we're working in the back loops. So there's, and your chain 3 counts as a stitch. So we have 4 double crochet. Here's our fifth one. All right, so now we are going to skip 1, 2 stitches, and then in this third stitch here, so this is the top of this 5 double crochet, you're going to work a little puff stitch right in that back loop. So now in our next puff stitch, so you're going to skip 2, on top of the next you're going to work 5 double crochet. And then we're going to skip 2 stitches, so 1, 2, and that third stitch there, work your little puff stitch on top. And now we are at our corner stitch, so we're going to skip all 3 of these stitches and work our corner, so our cluster, our chain 3, and cluster. So there's that. So now we are skipping 1, 2, 3. So actually, I missed a double crochet. See? 1, 2, 3, 4. How silly of me. But you know what? I don't feel like taking it apart and going back. So you can kind of fudge things sometimes when you crochet. So I'm just going to work my puff stitch right here. I don't even think you're going to notice it. So I don't recommend missing stitches, but if you do, it's not the end of the world. Sometimes you can kind of fudge it. And when you're looking at it, I mean, unless you are a super experienced crocheter and are studying this really hard, you're not going to be like, oh my gosh, she missed a stitch. You're not even going to notice it. Sometimes if it's really noticeable, I will go back, but for this, I'm not. So technically we're going to skip 2 and then work our 5 double crochet on top in the back loops. And we're going to continue that all the way around. So you're going to skip 2, except when you come to your corner, you'll skip these 3 stitches and work your cluster, chain 3 cluster. So I'm going to continue this all the way around for round 8, and hopefully I didn't miss any more stitches. Goodness me. Okay, I finished round 8, so now I'm going to join on top of my chain 3 here, and we're going to get ready for round 9. So to start round 9, I do want to switch to another color, but I'm going to show you how I'm going to do it. So I'm going to slip stitch in both loops in the next stitch. And then in the next stitch, the center one, we are working in back loops again. So I'm going to slip stitch in the back and get my next color. So here's another white, a whole bunch of different whites here. So I don't think I have enough of this one, so we're going to try a different one. So now we are ready to go for round 9. So I'm going to chain 1, and we are working a little puff stitch right on top there. And I'm going to cut that red to get it out of the way. Where is it? So we're getting close to the end of this little square. Alright, so now we're going to skip 2, and in this puff stitch we're going to work in the back loops 5 double crochet. Yep, always has to happen at least once. The hook likes to pop off. Oh my goodness. Yeah, we're going to do this. Alright, so we're going to skip the 2, and then on top of this guy we're working our puff stitch. And skip 2 and work our 5 double crochet, and we are going to be at our cluster after we're done our 5 double crochet. Okay, this round's going to be fun, I can tell. It's just popping off left and right. Alright, so now we're at our cluster, so we're going to do the same thing. We're going to skip all these guys and work the cluster, chain 3 cluster. Okay, and now we are going to skip the next cluster, and then in the back loop here, we're working our 5 double crochet, and you're going to continue that around. So you're going to work your 5 double crochet on top of your little puff stitches, and then you'll skip the 2. And it's really easy to know where to work your puff stitch because there's 5 double crochet here, So in that middle one, you're going to work the puff stitch in the back loops, and then when you come to your cluster, you work in your chain 3, you work your cluster, chain 3, cluster, and that's your corner there. So I will meet you back at the end of round 9. Okay, so I finished up round 9, so we have 2 more rounds to go. So to finish round 9, you need to join in the back loop of that first little puff stitch you made. So now we need to chain 1, and we're going to work a puff stitch right in that same stitch. And we're going to chain 2, and we're skipping 2 stitches, 1, 2, and we're working a puff stitch on top of. So in this third double crochet, in your 5 double crochet in that middle one, the third stitch, work a puff stitch, and we're chaining 2, and we're going to work a puff stitch on top of this puff stitch in the back loop. And we're chaining 2, and we're going to keep doing that, working our puff stitch in that middle double crochet. So we're going to chain 2 again. Now we are going to work in the cluster. We haven't worked on top of the cluster yet, but we are for this, so we're going to skip 2, and we're working our puff stitch in the back loop. And now we're going to work 3 puff stitches in this chain 3 loop. So here is the first one, the second one, and the third one. So we have our 3 puff stitches in that chain 3 loop. So now we are going to work a puff stitch in the next cluster stitch. And now we're chaining 2, and we're skipping 1, 2, and that third one right there, work our puff stitch. So you're going to continue that all the way around, working in back loops only until you get to your chain 3, then you work your 3 puff stitches, and remember to work a puff stitch on top of the cluster. So it's basically chain 2, skip 2 stitches, work a puff, chain 2, skip 2 stitches, work a puff stitch, until you get to the corners. But corners are, you know, it's puff on the one on top of the cluster, 3 puff stitches, and then a puff stitch on top of the next cluster, and then chain 2, skip 2. So I will finish this round, and I'll meet you back at the end of round 10. Alrighty, so I have finished up round 10. Now I need to join, and I want to switch back to red, so I have it on standby there. So we are going to join in both loops on our first cluster puff stitch, not a cluster, and I'm going to finish the stitch off with my red and be ready for round 11. And round 11 is the last round, so round 11 is pretty easy. So we're going to chain 1, we're working a puff stitch right in that same puff stitch, and after that puff stitch we are going to work a chain 1. So in the chain 2 space you're going to work a puff stitch. So you're going to chain 1, work a puff stitch in the next puff stitch. So in each chain 2 space you're going to work a puff stitch, chain 1, each puff stitch you're going to work a puff stitch, chain 1. So you're going to do that all the way around for round 11, and then you will join and you will be done with this round. You'll be done with your project actually. So just remember to chain 1 after your puff stitches, and I will meet you back at the end of round 11. Okay, I have finished round 11, and here is my completed square. I've actually weaved in my ends, and I blocked it as well. It did need a light block. So after round 11 you will have a total of 56 puff stitches. So after that I would highly recommend blocking your project after you weave in your ends. And I hope you enjoyed this project, and thank you so much for watching.